Hello. Today we're talking about 5.3. We're in Unit 4 of our math. And Unit 4 is all about bridging those decimals that we've been studying for the last little bit into fractions. And so today we're going to be figuring out fractions, starting with our fractions. So we need to figure out, first of all, what is a fraction? A fraction is just a number in the form of a over b, and b cannot be 0. So remember, we have this little fraction bar, we call it. We have a top number and a bottom number, and they can be any number with the exception of b cannot be 0. You can't divide something into 0 parts. So a over b. So we need to know that that top number is called our numerator. That's the top number in a fraction, so numerator, that's our word right here. And the bottom number we call the denominator. So when we have a over b, the top number is our numerator, the bottom's our denominator. You probably learned in elementary school, ND, like for North Dakota, same thing, ND, the numerator's on top, the denominator's on the bottom. So let's keep going. A fraction is just, it represents parts of a whole. So for example, if we have the fraction 2/5, 2 is our numerator, 5 is our denominator, it means 2 out of 5 parts. And so the 5 is the whole thing. So we have 5 bars here. If we're talking 2/5, that means we're talking about 2 out of 5. So we do a lot of talking about pieces, like it's real easy with food, with brownies. If this was a pan of brownies and we split it into 5 rows of brownies, 2/5 of the rows are gone. There were a total of 5, 2 of those 5, so part of the entire thing was eaten. So 2/5 would be represented like this. 2 out of the 5 bars would be colored in. So for example, I'm hungry. I want to eat 4/8 of a pizza. You're hungry, but you want a half of a pizza. Which of us wants more? Well, 4/8, 4 out of 8 slices. That means I have one pizza that we've cut into 8 slices, and I want to eat 4 out of those 8 slices. Your pizza, you decided to just cut it into 2 pieces, so you're eating 1 out of 2. That's what our parts of a whole. The whole thing would be 2 slices. You want 1 out of those 2. The whole thing over here would be 8 slices, and you want 4 of those 8. So who wants more? They're exactly equal. We've just taken the same pizza, the same size pizza here, and it's made it into more pieces. We have 8 total pieces over here. Here we only have 2. These are called equivalent fractions. So you're going to hear that a lot. Equivalent, E-Q-U-I-V, equivalent fractions. They mean the exact same amount. So nobody's getting any more pizza than the other. Even though I'm getting 4 slices, I'm getting 4 smaller slices, and this one's getting 1 big slice. It would still be the exact same amount of pizza. We just change how it looks. So I always consider this part to be, think of yourself. For myself, you guys know me as Mrs. Sorby, but I go home and nobody calls me Mrs. Sorby at home. I'm either Christy or Mom. If I'm with my friend, she sometimes calls me Chris. It's still me. I'm still the exact same person. I'm just being called something different. This would be Mrs. Sorby over here, and maybe this is Christy. So think about it that way. They're the exact same. We're just calling it something different. So let's keep moving. Equivalent fractions, what does it mean? So let's think about this. What would be an equivalent fraction to 3/7? Well, if I have 3 out of 7 pieces, try and think of a few on your own. Here's the first ones I think of. 3/7 is the exact same thing as 6/14. It's also the same thing as 30/70 or 300/700. We also have the same thing as 15/35. Or maybe we want to make it 21/49. How do we know that all of those are equivalent? I'm telling you they're equivalent, but what are we doing in order to get that? We know that these are equivalent fractions because the top and the bottom of this fraction were multiplied by the same number in order to get these other fractions here on the right. So I'm gonna write that down here. The top number and bottom, that's our key right there. This is an and sign. Doesn't really look like it, but it is. And the bottom number are multiplied by the same number. So if we look, 3 times 2 was 6, 7 times 2 is 14. That's what I mean by that. 3 times 10 was 30, 7 times 10 is 70. What did I multiply to get 300 over 700? Exactly, I multiplied both top and bottom by 100. How about this one? 3 times 5 was 15, 7 times 5 was 35. 3 times 7 was 21, 7 times 7 was 49. So we find equivalent fractions by taking the top and the bottom number and multiplying it by the exact same number. So 2 times 6 would give us 12. 3 times 6 gives us 18. Whatever operation you do to the top number, you need to do the same operation to the bottom number. So this is a really key slide for you. I want you to write this in your note. When finding equivalent fractions, whatever operation you do to the top number, you need to do the exact same operation to the bottom number. So 2 times 6 was 12, 3 times 6 was 18. Therefore, 2/3 and 12/18 are equivalent fractions. All right, so we can figure this out. We're going to have some examples like this in our homework where we have one fraction, we have half of another one, and we need to figure out what x equals. Well, all we need to do is to say 4 times what? 4 times what equals 16? What number do we take times 4 to equal 16? I hope you all said 4. 4 times 4 equals 16, and if we took that top number times 4, that means we have to take our bottom number times 4. So x is going to equal, dun, 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 20. Good job. So 4/5 and 16/20 are equivalent fractions. So let's just do a couple more. What if I gave you 5/9 and I said it was equal to something over 81? Can you figure out what it is? What would this mystery number be? So I always ask myself, 9, how do I get from 9 to 81? Ooh, 9, I multiply it times 9. 9 times 9 gets me to 81. So if I took that bottom number times 9, I need to take the top number times 9 to figure out what this is. So what's 5 times 9? X should equal 45. Good job. Now we'll do one more. What about if I had 6/35 and I said it was equal to 18 over something? Does anything change when my x is on the bottom? No. How do I get from 6 to 18? I multiply it times 3. If I take this bottom number and multiply it times 3, that'll tell me that x is, if you do the math, 105. So good job. We're almost done. Now, we also need to know what simplest form is, or lowest terms, or simplify it. Any of those mean that we need to take, sometimes we have fractions that are not in simplest form, and we need to simplify them. So 5/30, while it's a great fraction, that means 5 out of 30, we can simplify it. We need to have the numerator and denominator have a greatest common factor of 1. They don't have anything else we can divide out of it. So for me, I sit there and think, okay, 5 and 30, what do they have in common? They both are divisible by 5. So divide it by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. Remember, whatever I do to the top, whatever operation, it doesn't matter if it's multiply or divide, whatever I do, I need to do the same thing to the bottom. So 30 divided by 5 is 6. So now when I look at 1 and 6, they don't have anything in common other than 1. A 1 can't go any simpler than that. So this happens to be its simplest form or its lowest term. They mean the same thing. So that's what we want to make sure we do there. So let's try it out. We need to simplify 14 and 56. And for the record, you're always going to want to put things in simplest terms unless it tells you not to. So 14 and 56, do they have anything in common? Think of a number that we can divide both of them by. Well, they're both even. So I would say I'm going to divide it by 2. And if I divide the top number by 2, I have to divide the bottom number by 2. So what happens when I get 14 divided by 2? I get 7. 56 divided by 2, oh. Remember 56 is 50 plus 6. Half of 50 is 25. Half of 6 is 3. So 25 plus 3 is 28. So 7/28. Do they have anything in common, or is this as simple as it can go? Ooh, I hope you said they can both be divided by 7. You need to know your math facts here, people. Divide them both by 7, and what do we get? 7 divided by 7 is 1. 28 divided by 7 is 4. Wow, I had no idea that 1456 was the same thing as 1/4. I have a 1. I can't go simpler than that, so this is my lowest term, my simplified form. So I want you to try this one here. So go ahead and pause it and figure this one out, and then you can come back and check your answer. All right, hopefully right away 32 and 40 jumped out at me that they're both divisible by 8. 32 divided by 8 is 4. 40 divided by 8 is 5. So 4/5 is the simplified form. Now keep in mind, if you didn't recognize 8 right away, if you took 32/40 and said, okay, well, I can divide them by 2, that works too. It's just like a factor tree. It doesn't matter which path you take. As long as you do your math correctly, you're going to get to the same result. You could take this and go half. 32 divided by 2 is 16. 40 divided by 2 is 20. And then you'd go, oh, all right. I can divide it by 2 again. And we do that, and we get 8/10. And then, I can divide by 2 again, and I will eventually get to 4/5, which is exactly what we got to begin with. So don't forget your divisibility rules. This is where it's going to come in handy. Remember, if it's even, it can be divisible by 2. If you add them up, 3 plus 2 is divisible by, 3 plus 2 is 6. 6 is divisible by 3, so we could have divided it by 3 for 32, but not 40. If it ends in a 0 or a 5, it can be divided by 5. If it ends in a 0, it's divisible by 10. So you need to remember those divisibility rules because they're going to help you figure out how you can simplify a lot easier when it comes to your homework. So with that, come to class tomorrow prepared with any questions that you may have about this. Have a great night.